Good afternoon, News Time viewers. My name is Crystal Helleman here with First Alert Meteorologist Justin Bradford, who is bringing me some not so great news.
Well, what can you do? I'm the messenger after
You
all.
are. You're just a messenger.
Sure.
What can we expect tonight?
Yeah, so we've got a couple different seasons this week that we've been dealing with. We talked about how the cold yesterday really kind of bothered the region. It's the same thing the day before, but we're now going to start seeing the numbers warm back up. Back in the mid-40s today, and it's a pretty nice one out there. Even some filtered sunshine. Should be pretty good going around today. But then tonight, we bring big changes into the forecast, and some of those are going to be the stuff that people don't like as much, even though tomorrow we're back up into the 60s. And so it's a short-lived kind of little punch to the face of winter over the next 12 to 18 hours, and then after that we get back into some more pleasant weather for folks, especially since we're winding down March here. But I wanted to start off a look at our First Alert forecast with our satellite radar out here, which you see shows a system off to our west. There's tons of clouds that are going to be rolling in later on today, so enjoy that sunshine, soak it up out there while you can today. We are going to bring in warmth tomorrow, but tonight we fall back down to around the freezing mark, and that system, which you see looks like mostly clouds out there, is eventually going to glass over the Great Lakes, and it'll bring a mixture of some rain, some sleet, maybe even some freezing rain, and a couple of snowflakes are possible, but those really don't look like they're the modes of precipitation we're going to see as we go over these next 24 hours or so. So we are looking at that first alert here for the storm planner. That shows Tuesday night into Wednesday, bringing in that mixture. And it mainly, again, is going to be some sleet or very, very light freezing rain. But as you'll see when I show the totals in a moment, we're not expecting some big impacts from this. Fortunately, most of it, if not all of it, is going to be done well before the sun comes up. And so the morning drive tomorrow for most folks should not be anything you need to be too concerned about. We'll just have a few rain showers lingering at that point. But the temperatures are going to start rising before the sun even comes up, and that'll give way to some warmer conditions as we get into Wednesday afternoon. And so I wanted to take a look out here at the winter weather advisories because we have had some issued, and normally in the dead of winter when we get these, you got to be mindful of the fact that we could be seeing a couple of inches of snow. But this late in the season, as we get into late March, almost April now, winter weather advisories by the National Weather Service can get issued if we're expecting any type of winter precipitation that could be impactful for the forecast. And you'll notice that some of our southwestern counties are not included on those advisories. I think the fringe ones there, you see Barry, Eaton, Jackson, and Lenawee especially, are going to see very little, if any, of this wintry mix at all as far as the big-time impacts. I think more up towards the Flint-Saginaw region, further north towards Mount Pleasant, those are areas that end up being more impacted by this system. We could still, again, see some mixing take place, and there could even be a light glaze of ice in some spots in the very early hours. So if you're one of those 4 or 5 a.m. commuters tomorrow, you may want to be a little bit mindful of that. But if you're any later, you shouldn't have too much to worry about as we head into our Wednesday. So I also wanted to touch on here, Crystal, a couple different types of precipitation.
I love every time you show this.
Yeah, we talked about this over the wintertime when we had those mixed bag systems. So I wanted to just reiterate, it's pretty obvious for folks that when you have cold air profile, you're going to get snow. However, it gets a little more interesting when you add warm air in the mix, and that's what we're doing tomorrow, bringing in warm temperatures. And the way that this front works is higher in the air will actually warm up sooner than the surface will as this front blows over the area. And so you get a nice thin layer of warm air, but then allowing that snow to melt into rain and then refreeze as it approaches the surface. That's where you get sleet, and that's our frozen type that comes down. It looks a lot like snow when it starts to accumulate, but it has a much more grainy texture to it when you go to kind of ball it up or go to move it. Then the final one, of course, here that we want to talk about is freezing rain, because you got to get the surface down to below freezing, but you've got to have a thick enough warm layer that all of that rain melts and then stays melted until it gets to the surface. And then when it hits that cold surface, it can freeze over. Now, the good news tomorrow and into tonight is that the low is around 31, 32, but the numbers are going to rise as we go throughout the morning. And if we get more sunshine today, the ground, I don't think, will have as much time to cool off as we head into the daytime tomorrow, which would be good. That would mean that anything that does come down to ground level would end up melting on the roads and surface streets. And so that would be good news for us. That would mean nobody has to worry about any of this, which we would love to see. If we even do have a little bit, though, again, I think that it'll be in the very early hours tomorrow morning before the sun comes up. After sunrise, I don't think we see too much from this system because we're going to taper off to a few showers. And a lot of tomorrow actually stays dry, which we'll talk about in a moment in the hour by hour. But tomorrow is actually not too bad a day once you get past the early morning. I think we get into the midday hours, and we might hold on to some clouds, a few peaks of sunshine here and there, but a lot of the day going to be dry, and again, temps going back up to the 60s tomorrow.
Good.
So we're warming up when this warm front pushes through in a big way. We might have some late day showers, possibly a rumble of thunder, but it's mainly going to be scattered showers as we get closer to dinner time tomorrow that kind of wrap up. So Wednesday starts with rain, middle is dry, ends with rain, but in the very early hours we may deal with some of the frozen stuff we described here.
So we're just kind of in that time of year where some of the surfaces are warmer, and then they're freezing again overnight, so it's just kind of keeping track of all of this. It's that time of year where it can change.
It can.
Every day.
And it can change very quickly, and that's kind of what we've done this week. We went from highs in the 20s this weekend to then back up into the low 30s yesterday, and we'll make it back to the mid-40s today, but it's 60s tomorrow, 50s early Thursday, but the numbers are going to fall, and then we're only in the low 40s on Friday before we then rebound back to the 50s and 60s next week. So it's just that very back-and-forth pattern that you typically see this time of year, especially late March, early April. But I did want to go ahead and look at the hour by hour.
Yeah, let's look at those 60s.
Yeah, so we talked about these precipitation chances. So today, here's a look at that hour by hour. Again, there's filtered sunshine all the way through our sunset. It's not until about 9, 10 o'clock tonight that some of us even start seeing a few of these, and they may be mixed rain, snow showers at first. But after that, we get into the late overnight. You see all the pink color that shows up on the map here. That's where you get your sleet or your freezing rain. But you also notice that a lot of the temperatures there are still around or just above the freezing mark. If that's the case, this would be more of a sleet profile than it would be for freezing rain. And so that would mean we end up seeing a little bit more of the former there, which is better because at least with sleet you get a little bit more traction on the roads. And again, all of this either way, this is 4 a.m. where we've got it stopped, and you see that there is still some mixing south and west in the state. So when that front pushes through, we have a couple more scattered showers, I think even a few more than the model shows here, but by 8:30, when a lot of folks are hitting the road to go to those 9 to 5s, you see temperatures are already into the middle and upper 30s, and all of the precipitation has changed over to rain, which will in effect melt any sort of frozen stuff that does make it to the surface. And if it doesn't melt by 8:30 a.m., boy, it'll really melt as the day goes on. We get temps cruising back up into the 60s. Jackson possibly as high as 65, 66 degrees by Wednesday evening. But then again, we are bringing in a few more rain showers to the area. Those will linger into the evening, and especially as we head throughout Wednesday night, we'll get some more. But even this, you notice, 10:30, we stop it again. We're still in the upper 50s to near 60 degrees. And so things feeling a lot more almost late spring-like. Even you get a cool day in summer. This is more what tomorrow is going to feel like with the humidity creeping back in. And especially following up days that were in the 20s and 30s over these past few, this is going to feel really warm even though it's only 60. I mean, that'll be still more than 10 degrees above our normal for this time of year. So I also wanted to touch on a couple things here. We're going to look at 3, the predicted snow, the predicted ice, and the predicted rain.
All of them.
I'll tell you right now, snow we're not going to see much, if any of at all. You see here that there may be some trace amounts, and even that would be barely anything at all in 1 or 2 spots around the area. Nothing that will stick because everything will melt very quickly. We'll head now into the ice accumulation. This is the one that worries a lot of people because you certainly don't want a hockey rink out there when you're driving around in your vehicle in the morning. But as I mentioned earlier, fortunately, by tomorrow, we're only looking at maybe a few hundredths of an inch of ice in some northern sections. This is going to be more of a concern the further you get towards the Flint-Saginaw region and then far north in the state. But for most of us, this is not going to be an issue as we head into the daytime tomorrow, and that certainly is the good news. Now, predicted rainfall is going to vary depending on where you're at. As you see here, we head into the late overnight hours. We start picking up a few showers tonight first before everything cools back down to around the freezing mark. But even throughout the day tomorrow, we're only picking up, well, a quarter to a half inch in most spots. I think Lansing, the estimate, a little high there with that range. But that's what we pick up into the evening and heading into the overnight. More of this rain, again, going to be further north in the state and even north of the viewing area. But we still have a little bit of rain to deal with in that forecast as well. And so that's just something to be mindful of as we go throughout the next 24 hours. Again, the snow, hardly there at all, if anything. Maybe a few flakes here and there, nothing that's going to stick. It is the sleet and then very small traces of ice that are possible. But again, everything gets washed out with the rain and the warming temperatures as we head into the morning on Wednesday. So we shouldn't have any big travel concerns for tomorrow unless you're in far northern sections and you got to hit the road like before 6 a.m. That's where you might have to pay a little bit of attention to the forecast. I know you're one of those people.
I am one of those people. I'm on the road at like 4:30. So So when you say a trace, what constitutes a trace?
Yeah, so that's just like any type of glaze that comes on a surface. So if you go out on the sidewalk and you happen to see it's just a little bit of slippery, there's a tiny little accretion of ice, that's a trace amount. And so even even a tenth of an inch or so of ice can cause quite a few issues, but we're not expecting that tomorrow. I think this is more on the magnitude of maybe a few hundredths of an inch, which, I mean, I don't know, I can't even really describe here, but just very, very little. And again, things warming back up. If you don't get up until 7:30, 8 o'clock, or even later than that, you may just sleep through any of those impacts whatsoever anyways, and you're going to walk outside and go, where's the possibility of ice or anything he's talking about? Well, it won't affect you if you're later than that, and unfortunately it warms back up throughout the day too.
So we're kind of also in that time of year where you have to wear your winter coat when you get up to go to work. You got the heat on, you got to warm your car up, but by the time you get out of work, you might roll your windows down.
Tomorrow you might, especially if we're dry 3, 4 o'clock and things like that, heading towards the dinner hour, you might, with temperatures in the 60s, and the humidity is going to be noticeable tomorrow. I think that's the main thing. We haven't really had a couple days which got into the 60s and one that reached 70 so far this year. Those weren't very humid days. They were pretty dry. And so tomorrow, with the rain showers being around the area and a humid air mass, it'll have more of that late spring, early summer type feel tomorrow. But again, reality check hits Thursday. So maybe I'll show that real quick just to kind of let people know what's going on. We'll go back to the graphics and we'll show you what we expect for today. So again, highs are back into the mid-40s. We increase the cloud cover, and then late tonight we move in with that icy mix that moves in late. But again, this is not going to be a big impactor for most of the area. 31's the overnight low, but the temps start rising before the morning, and tomorrow we more than double that temperature. We go back up into the low, in some spots middle 60s. Showers are very scattered tomorrow. They again start in the early parts of the day, but then we'll have a good break for maybe 6-7 hours, and then we bring it back in the evening and into the overnight. So the last thing I'll show here is the 3-day forecast, which again, very up and down. Mid-40s today, mid-60s tomorrow, and then 50s Thursday. But a thing to note about that high of 52, you notice it's only 2 degrees above our Wednesday night low. So we're still, I mentioned, in the 50s all the way through midnight on Wednesday as we continue with the rain showers. We have a few of those linger into Thursday, but then Thursday things become pretty windy around here. We may have some wind gusts upwards of about 40 miles per hour, and the rain wraps up in the morning. That high of 52 very early in the day. It'll be about right when you wake up, and temperatures will actually fall as the daytime goes on. And so we'll spend most of Thursday dropping through the 40s, and before the day's done, we may actually be in the 30s before the sun goes down. And so that high of 52 Thursday, that's not your late afternoon high like it normally would be. That's very early in the morning with, again, windy conditions. And if it's windy when the temps drop into the 30s, those wind chills will be in the 20s by the end of Thursday. And so the feels like number Wednesday in the mid-60s and in the 20s late Thursday is going to be another big 24-hour difference in our conditions. And so something just to be mindful of, very up and down pattern that will continue to follow into the week. Fortunately, the weekend looks quiet, and so does early next week with highs returning to near normal or a little bit above normal even. And the long-term pattern also does favor some above average temps, especially as we get into mid to late April and also May. So that is certainly welcome news for folks. The sooner we can stop dealing with any of this wintry type weather, I think the happier folks tend to be around here.
And you mentioned the up and down. People are, as you can see on our Facebook poll, people are ready for summer. They're ready for spring even. So we have to be mindful that it is still not really spring.
That's true, right. I mean, we're gearing towards that weather, but this time of year, especially when you're talking about conditions around the region, including with lakes and rivers, those are still very cold. Not only the Great Lakes, but the inland lakes and rivers too have very bone-chilling temperatures as we come out of the season, and it does take a couple of warm weeks, in fact, to really heat those back up to some even somewhat comfortable temperatures.
Yeah, you may have seen it on our newscast today on News 10 Today at 11. It's also on our website, WLX.com. But 2 people were actually pulled from Lake Lansing this morning. And that lake, we weren't really sure if it was completely frozen over, but it's that time of year where you may see ice, but it's not really ice that you can be on, stand on, really do anything on. So
it's very thin, and I think people I'm sure from the Lake Lansing area over there can attest to this. I believe parts of the southwest side of the lake still does have a little bit of ice on it. Some of the lake is open, and so it looks like you'd be able to go out, but very, very chilly water, and so certainly it gets deeper than standing out there, and that's where you don't want to go on that lake this time of year, because if you do happen to fall out of anything or you go into the water and you're not able to touch the base of the ground level, then your reflex tends to be to kind of gasp, and your body kind of tenses up as you hit water that's that cold. As I mean, that's even worse than air when you're submerged in the water, and you tend to take a big gasp and breathe in, and it's really hard to move around and do anything. So even swimming to shore is very difficult and even impossible in some cases. So you always want to have either a life jacket on, or if you must go out and do something out where you want to be around the water, make sure that it is certainly shallow enough where you are able to stand, and also take a life jacket as well, because you never know, something unfortunate can happen. Fortunately, those folks end up being okay.
Yep, so we have all of that story on our website, WLX.com. We'll also have it later on today with News 10 First at 5, and we will see you a little bit later. Correct?
Yeah, so I'll be on Studio 10. That's coming up at 4 o'clock. We'll be talking more about what we can expect for tonight, and then you certainly won't want to miss meteorologist Andy Provenzano. That's in our 90 Minutes of News, which every day starts at 5 o'clock.
All right, well, thank you so much, Justin, and we hope to see you guys a little bit later.
Absolutely.